Hi guys, in today's episode we're talking preseason. It's the game between Melbourne and St Kilda. Joe, Melbourne and St Kilda, two Melbourne teams. No one had to travel. I mean, someone had to travel because they didn't live at the stadium. But I thought this game was going to be a little bit more than what we saw. What do you reckon?
Nah, it was exactly what I expected. I don't think St Kilda are going to be pushing for finals this year. It might seem a bit harsh, but look, I think I agree with the decision to get Ross in. I think Ross is definitely going to be an improvement as a coach, but I don't think it's going to be one of those magical years like Craig McRae had last year in terms of being able to come in first year, change things. It's very rare, I think, for a team to just completely transform like that. And Collingwood really were ready to go and were blessed with injuries, and they really didn't have any injuries last year. But that's entirely the opposite situation for St Kilda. They are absolutely getting lambasted with injuries, especially in the forward department. Man, it sucks.
Yeah, seems like almost every week it's just like, oh, here's another guy getting injured. Here's another one. Here's another one. Especially now with the SSP finished, team sheets are basically done. They really can't afford to have anything extra happen. The midfield's okay, the back line, it's whatever, but that forward line's really costing them a lot, and it will cost them a lot this year.
And it was already difficult as it was, and then you gotta, I suppose, bless you, and then you sort of add onto all that heartache. Now you've also got the news of Jack Billings, who's also suffered a hairline fracture in his right fibula and is going to be out for 8 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, it was the last thing that they needed, really, just to get more injury news. But I suppose it's not all doom and gloom. They did show that they certainly have some young talent that's really about to blossom, and I think none more so than Mateus Philippou, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not the best thing for Billings' career either. This year, alongside last year, was supposed to be the things that really reinvented himself in a different position. Was like, hey, I've got to do something, otherwise potentially I'm on the chopping block or might not even get a new contract. So being injured is probably not a good thing. I agree with you though. Philippou did look really good in the preseason game. Someone who had a bit of hype talked about him. Personally, I didn't really see it. But then in the game, obviously, he was around the ball, did quite well. I think he even kicked a goal or two, or at least set things up for St Kilda. So really good player that they've kind of picked up there. Pretty amazing that he fell to pick 10.
Yeah, I wanted him personally. I think my views as an Essendon supporter were well known. I think at this point I wanted Philippou. I love the energy that he could bring and his size, and just keep providing us with something different. And he took a couple of I think 3 or so from what I can recall, really towering contested marks in a pack. You know what I mean? Like, they were not easy for an 18-year-old, taking them against arguably the best defense that we've seen in the modern era with Melbourne. And this guy's taken 3 multiple, massive contested marks, and he kicked 2 goals, and one of them was a bomb from 55 meters out. For an 18-year-old coming in, absolutely sensational. I think you could really hear in the commentary, from through the commentary on KO, just every time the ball was getting near him, the St Kilda faithful over there at Moorabbin, they're getting excited. You really were showing them something. And to be honest, they didn't have much to cheer on that game. So at least they walked away a bit happy with his output.
Yeah, shame he couldn't really carry them to the promised land. St Kilda got done pretty hard. It was 16-9, 105 to 6-10, 46. So, basically a 50-point thrashing there. They did show some signs, like you said, but Melbourne, boy, oh boy, they're just so much a better team. Really feels like Goodwin's come in and said, hey, the things that were hurting us last year are the things that we really have to work on. For me personally, I think that was the forward line. And we saw that go kind of bang in this game. Obviously a massive score. And one of the big things for them was getting a lot more goals than behinds, which I think was a bit of an issue in 2022.
Yeah, that definitely was. I think there were quite a few games last year Melbourne blew simply due to inaccuracy. that they probably should have been a bit further out in front before then getting run down a couple of times. They just left the door ajar for teams, and I think none more so than in that game against Collingwood. You can't give Collingwood a sniff with the way that they play their footy. And that Queen's birthday, or what will be King's birthday this year, was one that I think that they really let slip. They really seemed to identify, again, that their defensive structure was really solid, was really sound. And they could tell that, St Kilda were very short forward, and they really needed to get the ball moving quickly, ASAP, with overlap running, to get the ball forward and sort of try and get some repeat inside 50s. But the way they were able to set up, they were still able to simply absorb the quick ball movement and cause turnovers around the middle of the ground. How much it was because of their pressure, or how much was it due to the lack of tall targets for St Kilda? Obviously, time will tell. But they were able to cause a lot of turnovers around the middle of the ground, get the ball moving quickly, with a lot more midfield time for Cozzy Pickett. Man, he really lit it up that game.
Yeah. Looking back on St Kilda, I know it's not really Supercoach relevant, but Dougal Howard going forward and being a bit of a forward player now for them, seeing he was so good in the defense last year, seems a bit of a weird choice. I guess they kind of run out of tools, like you're saying. Now Melbourne's ball movement is fantastic, and they do have a lot of those kind of really powerful players. We saw Lockie Hunter come in and just demolish a team that just wasn't ready for his output. Obviously, last year at the Dogs, he wasn't really, maybe not up to speed. I think COVID, I think kind of just the hubs, and then of all of the mental health problems, that kind of thing, just kind of boiled over, and it was partly why he was let go, I think is probably the right word to say. Future third-round pick coming into Melbourne, if he ends up best 22 off this performance, boy, oh boy, they've got a big, big steal on their hands, because, golly gosh, he was scary. Just adds another bow to their engine room. It's fantastic down there at Melbourne.
He was running and gathering the ball at will. He was just doing whatever he wanted. St Kilda just really gave him no respect whatsoever. This guy, he's always been a very crafty player. He's able to run around the ground, get these, and have these really accurate short passes on angles, and he just cut them to ribbons, really. And I was a little bit disappointed that they didn't put more effort into him and just continued to let him do whatever the hell he wanted. But I guess they just felt that there were too many issues, really. There were just too many powerful. They're just simply targeting him to tag or limit him probably would have taken away whatever chance they had in the middle, because their hands were pretty full. Obviously, when you've got a midfield that has got either a Gawn or Grundy tapping the ball down to a Clary, Petrarca, Viney was also very lively. You've got all these players running through the middle, and then you've got Lockie Hunter on the wing. It's just, they have so many weapons now to get the ball moving forward, whether it's by leg speed with Cozzy Pickett or by kicking the ball through Lockie Hunter. They're becoming a lot more offensive, I think. They've still got their defensive structure behind the ball, but they're now adding, as you say, this extra bow to their string in terms of being able to move the ball forward in different ways. And their forward line looked to be pretty potent.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you just can't stop everybody. Melbourne's so strong across the board. And we're talking them up a lot. It's the preseason, but now they've got even better. So they're just so strong across the board that you just can't mark every player. Someone will go big. We saw that last year with Oliver and Petrarca. Like, one would get tagged and the other one would go big, or vice versa, or some games they'd go big together and you just couldn't stop them. Now you've got Hunter coming in doing the same thing that, adds something else to the team. And boy, it's going to be really hard for strong teams to actually even just mark them. It might just be a case of, well, we'll let the floodgates go and we'll just have to play our game and not have to stop, aim to stop a single player like we do maybe against the North Melbourne or a GWS or even an Essendon type. Mark Merritt, and then, half the team's gone. You just can't do it at Melbourne now.
Yeah, we saw that happen. The classic example was against Gold Coast when they played GWS, and they did a double tag on Tuke Miller. They said two people onto Tuke Miller, and they just identify him as the big threat. With Melbourne, who are you going to stop? I noticed fairly early into the game, especially around the stoppages, there always seemed to be around two people almost ready and waiting for Clary to receive the ball and then immediately tackle him. It felt like they were being deliberate in trying to limit his influence at stoppages. But by doing that, we saw, especially early on, just how free Petrarca was. And Petrarca was just moving the ball out of the front of the centre square, linking up with Gawn. Their connection was something to behold in that game. And, it was close to best on ground in that first half as well, if not for, Cozzy Pickett really being dangerous as well, who they're now introducing more and more into the midfield mix. He's one that I'm really keeping a close eye on, especially in this game to come. I think Cozzy Pickett, if he's going to continue getting these mid minutes, then it's really impressive. I guess speaking of mid minutes, might be a good time to bring up some of the CBAs, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll touch on a little bit about Grundy, how good he was. Just kind of sharing the ruck time, but also doing other things across the line. And then also, we didn't really talk about guys like Caulfield, who from St Kilda, who were, you'd hope were best 22, but we didn't see them play in the senior team. So kind of crosses them off my list there. Definitely. Let's pull up the mid minutes, and then we can have a chat about those.
So massive thank you again goes out to Matt Forrest, who's done an amazing job in giving us these statistics. Thank you very much for doing the Lord's work. Matt, if you're on Twitter, please go follow him. He doesn't get paid for this, showing up with us on Twitter. So thank you very much. You can see Steele was still the main guy. Steele is still the main guy there, over there at St Kilda. But he didn't really catch the eye. 87.5%. He obviously got his hands on it, and he kicked the goal, but it wasn't really very flashy. I just felt like the St Kilda midfield was soundly beaten, of course, by one of the best mids in the comp. Crouch, 83.3%. A lot of numbers there. Winhager is a mid-pricer that a lot of people are considering. If they're not a big fan of Flanders, for example, for 10K more, you can go with a Winhager. There are people predicting him to break out. Last year, he had that first year where he had a lot of responsibility tagging players. And we've seen that a lot of successful mids, when they move on to being primary ball winners themselves after having tagged someone in the past, they're really quite good at that job. So he also had quite a few centre bounce attendances, 41.7%. And then you had some people chip in. Sinclair's an interesting one, at 29.2%. I don't think we saw that number being that high last year, right? It was definitely half back flank.
He did burst out a little bit from the middle. If not in the CBAs, like actually just during the game, he'd run in the middle and then throw the ball forward. We do have some insider knowledge that him and Wangani Miller will be sharing kick-ins, but also that allows Sinclair to play a little bit more of a mid-role. They're looking for a lot of speed and agility and kind of pinpoint kicking through that midfield, and that's something that Sinclair really, really offers. A lot of teams are running that type of player now. You'll see a De Goey, you'll see a Stringer a little bit. You'll see kind of guys like Paul Curtis or Papley, these type of players being midfielders now because they're so powerful and they can just run and no one can really stop them. Having someone like Sinclair there offers a little bit more and then frees up other players to do other things as well. So Wangari Miller is a bit of a shout as well in the back line, kind of due to Sinclair's rotations through the middle. But, it's pretty good Supercoach-wise, something to really look out for. If he's getting CBAs, he might get some contested possessions, and then it kind of goes from there. So could be an extra way for him to do some scoring.
Yeah, and Hunter Clark had 29.2%. But personally speaking, I didn't like his game. I didn't think that he played really well at all. And I think there's definitely better use of your cash. I would probably stay away from Clark, to be honest. And then you look at the midfield for the Demons. Look at the CBAs there. Oliver, 70.83%. Clearly the number one man. Petrarca, 50%. Viney, 45%. Harms, 45%. And Pickett is the difference there, that they're really giving him a lot more midfield time compared to last year. And he looked really good. I've got to keep an eye on this guy for another week, that's for sure.
Well, it's like what we were saying about Sinclair, right? The same kind of thing goes for Pickett. He might not be a defender that's moved to the midfield, but it fulfills the same kind of role. These really powerful, quick players that are okay kicks that, they're hard to tackle. They've got the agility and the pace to be able to run with the ball and move. It's kind of a dynamic that the AFL's moving to a lot of teams, and it obviously is working out well for them. Melbourne wouldn't do it if it's not, if it's not going to work. DPP wise for Supercoach, Petrarca's definitely one to look at. Him playing a lot of high half forward, it's something that we flagged previously in our Melbourne reviews, talking about Petrarca in his player preview as well. That, he might be one that's penciled in for DPP. They've got so many players that are running through there, and he's so good at that position that they can just kick it to him and then he can shoot the ball forward. He doesn't have to get CBAs to be effective. And obviously in this game, if this continues in like this trend for 4 or 5 weeks into the season, hey, DPP come round 6, it could be a real option there.
Exactly. And not just him. Look at the rucks. Look at the split. Look at this percentage in the middle. Gone 41.7% in the centre bounce. Where was Heber? Where is the other times? He's lining up forward. We could have a Gone DPP come round 6.
It's crazy,
Oh my God. Big J, do we dare to dream?
It's pretty crazy. It's something I talked about last year, kind of moving into 2023 as being a real option, having both of them playing. Someone's got to get DPP. We saw it with Darcy Cameron last year. He would have got forward DPP if he didn't already start with it, just from him and Grundy, kind of the way they set up. Now, Grundy and Gawn may be at the same centre bounce, but one of them will only ruck. I think Melbourne's kind of issues with their forward line pushes one of those guys into the forward line as another tall target. They're really mobile, right? So they don't have to be a tall target that just stays in the goal square. Gawn will roam. So it's more just about where he starts at the bounce. If he gets forward DPP, it really opens up a lot of things for Supercoach and people that are going 5 and 6 deep keepers, which I've seen a few teams. We might get stuck like they did last year, not being able to bring in a Bont or somebody because they're like, well, I don't want to sideways one of my good players for another good player.
Yeah, I think looks like 4 primos might be the max you should go for because just from this game alone, you could end up come round 6 having Petrarca and Gawn both have forward status. So I think you want to have 2 spots available in your forward line, at least 2 spots available in your forward line, because if these stats continue, obviously this is just one unofficial practice game. You got to continue, obviously, doing your research, watching the centre bounce here and other channels as well to give you the news on these games. But at this point in time, it's really exciting, man.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And that's why we do reviews like this, because some of this information might not come out, and that's why we're here.
Exactly. And pretty quickly, I suppose we can look at the kick-ins before we wrap things up. May, of course, the regular general down back, he had 82% of kick-ins, which were 9 of them. Bowie had the other 18, the other 2. So that's fairly good for a mid-pricer. Sinclair shared 50%, and Wangamura, that should be 50%, if 50 and 50. So, but that's not 50 and 50. 4 and 2 is 6. So
I don't know.
the maths doesn't make sense here, Matt. But maybe it was a bad screenshot or something. I don't know.
Maybe someone else took 1 and then someone else took 1. But it kind of goes about what I was saying about Sinclair being in the mids. He might start there, Miller starts back, and then, takes kickouts that way.
So that brings our discussion, our review of the St Kilda versus Melbourne game to a close. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. I know it's a little bit late, but better late than never. We're going to pump out all of this content and so much more to come. So please, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you liked what you saw.
Yeah, and remember, we've got our Supercoach group as well, so you guys can win some amazing prizes. We'll chuck it down in the information for that down in the comments below. Here at the Centre Bounce, we do the hard work so you don't have to. Bye for now.